Good morning. My name is Derek. I'm one of the pastors here on staff. That feels good. That feels good. I needed that. Thank you. Hey, a couple things. If you're new, if you're visiting with us today, I want to tell you welcome, welcome, welcome. I mean, I know personally it's such a strange thing and it's a difficult thing to visit a church, to come in. We use words saying like, hey, we're family. We know each other. We have this community. And when you come in from the outside, you're like, not me. You know, I know how that feels. So we just want you to say, we want you to feel like family, all right? Anything we can do to help, to extend that invitation to say, man, we love that you're here. And if you want to go to Info Bar outside in the lobby after church, if you want to try to grab me after church, I'd love just to say, hey, I'd love to get to know you a little bit, answer any questions that you might have. And really, I just want to say thank you for being here. Also, I want to say thank you to anybody who's giving to the mission at Peak City, man. I just had one of those great weeks as a pastor, like seeing life change. I had a couple conversations about folks making a first-time decision. Like, I just discovered Jesus. I've heard about baptism. I want to do that. I've had a couple of those conversations in the last week. I had a conversation with a school that we're wanting to partner with in the fall, and they're saying, hey, if Peak City can be a part of some life change in our school, we would love to have them be a part of that. Just Joseph and I were talking. His son Elijah, we're trying to kind of resuscitate our additional needs ministry here. Man, got great families and great people wanting to serve and do incredible things. And I just go, man, God is really alive in Peak City right now. So if you're giving to that mission, I just want to tell you, man, your money's going to incredible things. God's doing incredible things with it. But also, I just want to say thank you for that. We wouldn't be able to do all that and expand God's kingdom without your gift. So thank you. And if you're curious about giving, go to our website, Peak City Co. Joseph, wherever you are, that is our website. peakcityco.com/give. And you can jump in and be part of what God's doing through giving to the mission. Let's jump into this message today. I want to start. We have our marks at Peak City that we say we want to be marked by these things. The first one is raw. We want to be marked by how vulnerable we are. So I'm going to open today with just talking about some of my own failures. So that's exciting for me. A few years ago, I signed up for a race. It was the inaugural Red River Gorge 100 MTB, and it was in Kentucky. It was a 100-mile mountain bike race. You guys have the Leadville 100 here in Colorado. One of the guys that helped organize Leadville moved to Kentucky and said, I want to do a race like this in Kentucky. So he did the inaugural race. So I took part in the very first Red River Gorge MTB 100. It also happens to be the very last Red River Gorge MTB 100, and I'll explain to you why a little bit. Man, it's hard to find enough terrain in Kentucky for 100 miles of mountain biking. You guys, we have it so much here. We don't realize how much mileage we have, but training for this thing, man, I was riding everywhere. I was riding through farmland. I was riding on Jeep trails that were just rough, like just awful Jeep trails. I was just bushwhacking through the woods because I didn't know how else I was going to train, and I wanted to train really, really well so I could finish the race. So I did everything it took leading up to race day to be really prepared. Then we get to the day of the race. And we pull in the parking lot. It's me and three buddies, and we pull in the parking lot and immediately realize we had no business being there whatsoever. Like, there are guys with Sprinter vans, ladies with Sprinter vans. Literally, one lady I walked past, she was getting a rub down by some team member, like massaging her legs, and her face is like 6 foot big on this van. And I'm sitting here in my truck going, I don't think I belong here, all right? Like, I literally was wearing cutoff jeans and a flannel shirt because it was cold in the morning. I pull up to the starting line. One of these guys, like fully like Lycra, kitted out with his name and everything on it. He looks at me and he looks at my flannel shirt and my shorts and he says, I've never seen a lumberjack in jorts at the starting line before. And I thought, well, thanks. You make me feel really welcome. I'm glad to be a part of this. So that was the beginning. Most people, when they do something like this, they say, it was really hard, but I'm so glad I did it. I just want to tell you, it was really hard and I wish I hadn't done it, all right? Like, that sets the tone for the entire race. Three buddies and me. We set off and we go. Mile 40, one of my buddies quits. He's like, I'm out. This is dumb. I hate it. I regret this decision. I'm done. He doesn't even make it to the halfway point. We get to the halfway point, 50-mile aid station, and there's a group of amateur riders. There's not many of us. Most of the people there were like sponsored. The few amateur riders that were there kind of gathered up and went, hey, you look like you're not very important. You look like you don't belong here. Let's talk, all right? And they say, hey, I think I'm out. I'm quitting. This is not what I expected it to be. This terrain is not mountain bike terrain. I'm out of this. I'm gone. So about half the people quit right there, the amateur riders. I sat there and I decided, I'm done. I'm done. And then I went immediately, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. I really want to finish this race. So I made the decision to quit. And within 10 minutes, I went, you know what? No, I'm going to push on. I'm going to move forward. So I go. I set off and I pedal. I still have 3 buddies left in the race. We're still going together. Eventually, we kind of split up. We no longer are together. Eventually, I'm just by myself. I find myself at mile 60. And there's an aid station at mile 60. It's in the middle of nowhere. And there's this aid station there. And the volunteers say, good news, bad news. All right, we've actually set up another aid station at mile 66. So you're not far away from getting another much-deserved break. The bad news is there's a 2-mile climb coming out of this aid station. It's really, really muddy, and we've not seen anybody ride it so far. Nobody's been able to ride it. They've had to push their bike through this next 2 miles. So I was like, all right, let's go. Let's do it. So I head off on my own up this 2-mile track. I'm pushing my bike. It's so muddy. I'm slipping and falling. It's so steep at times I can't even push my bike. I have to lift it, carry it. At one point, I kid you not, I drop my bike and it goes behind me and just bounces down the mountain. No kidding. Bounces down the mountain, probably, 15 or 20 yards. I will tell you, emotionally in mileage, it was all 60 miles, all right? Emotionally speaking, my bike went all the way back to the starting line. And I hung my head, I walked back, and man, I was discouraged. I was so beat. Just physically felt one way, but emotionally the same. I don't want to do this anymore. So I finally get to that aid station at mile 66. And the lady there, she says, hey, welcome, here's the deal. We're here for you, fill your water bottle. We can feed you a little bit. Here's the deal, though. 60 riders total. There's still 20 riders behind you, and they're not making pace. They're going to be swept off the course. So if you want to continue, you're going to be in last place. She said, if you continue also, I don't think there's any way you're going to make the time cutoff. You're going to be swept off the course at some point, too. She was really good at filling water bottles, not so great at the pep talk, all right? So I sat there for a little bit and I thought, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it all the way. I've been training for this. I want to see that finish line so bad, but there's no way I'm going to make it. So I said, all right, I'm out. Call the sag wagon to come pick me up. And I took a picture of my bike on the back of this car. I hate this picture, all right? This is for weeks, I just thought about that decision of giving up. I've been talking about it for months, telling everybody on social media I'm training for this race. I'd given so many hours, so much time. I wanted it so badly. And then all of a sudden, there's my bike on this rack of this sag wagon saying, you couldn't do it. You failed. You gave up. And I lived with that decision. Man, I wish I'd have been swept from the course. That would have been better than just being the guy that gave up. But I was so discouraged, man. There was just nothing I can do. So I've dealt with failure. I've dealt with discouragement. In fact, I would tell you, man, discouragement goes a lot deeper than just a race. And today I want to talk about discouragement. How discouragement feels. Some of us today have walked in with some significant burdens. Some of you hear a story about a mountain bike race and you go, man, I got a doozy that could top that, and you're not wrong. Life sometimes was rough. Life sometimes just gets to the point where you have no other option but failure. I've met and talked to so many of you all. So much of us just living regular life right now are facing a lot of discouragement. I've got some folks that were engaged and had to break off the engagement. It just wasn't working. They come into church on Sunday and their head's hanging pretty low. I know a family who, they got their dream house. It's everything they ever wanted, and now they can't afford to live there. They're going, man, we didn't expect all these unanticipated bills, and man, we thought it was going the way we wanted, and it's not. There's real life issues with finding jobs. There's real life issues with raising kids. I want to take a minute and give a shout out and just mention you students out there. This is a season of life where you start dealing with real discouragement. When you're little and your ice cream cone falls on the ground, you think you're discouraged, But when you get bigger, you students are dealing with real issues here where you're going, man, this is hard. Relationship stuff, job stuff, school stuff. We all deal with discouragement. So I was just thinking about discouragement this week when I came across this psalm. We've been in the summer of Psalms. So just this week I was thinking, what are we going to teach on this week? What psalm do we need to hit? I came across Psalm 37:4. It says, take delight in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. And that's a good one, man. That's like grandma embroiders it on a pillow and hangs it, you know what I mean? Like, take delight in the Lord and he gives you the desires of your heart. And I want to tell you a little bit, take delight in the Lord, he gives you the desires of your heart. That means if you delight in God, ultimately your heart will desire God. And the more you desire God, the more you will delight in God. The more you delight in God, the more you're going to want him and the more satisfied you're going to become. And on it goes. It's like this Mobius strip of relationship of back and forth. The more you want God, the more God gives you himself. And the more he gives him yourself, the more satisfied you are. You're just happy. I have all the desires of my heart. That's like dream life, right? I have all the desires of my heart. Nothing else operates that way. You know, if I desire more time with my wife, I don't necessarily get more time with my wife. And in fact, if I got that time with my wife, she'd be saying, hey, can I have a break? You know what I mean? Like, can I get some time off? I'll give you another example. If I desire egg rolls, all right? I love egg rolls. In fact, I mastered the art of making homemade egg rolls when I was in quarantine, all right? You can tell, this is why I can no longer ride 66 miles on a mountain bike, all right? I mastered the art of making egg rolls. If I love egg rolls and I desire more egg rolls, does that mean I get more egg rolls? No. And even if I did get all those egg rolls, would that mean I would want more egg rolls? No, I'd get sick and tired of them, but that's not it with God. Psalm 37:4 is so true. If you delight yourself in the Lord, he will give you the desires of your heart. If you love God, want God, he'll give you more God, and you'll have all your heart desires. But if that's so true, why is that so hard? I mean, that's so simple. And if it's true, should not be able to attain that. Should not be able to reach that level of satisfaction, of desire, and delight. Should not be able to find that. But here's the reality. The reason that we can't find that delight is often discouragement. Something derails us as we desire God and more of him. Something discourages us and throws us off the track, and we can no longer get back over here with God. And that's today what I want to start with is discouragement can overcome desire. If you're a note taker, that's a good one to write down. And actually, if you're not a note taker, get your phone out. Write these things down because I think there's a bit of a cycle that we need to think about as we deal with discouragement. And the first thing is to understand this. Discouragement can overcome desire. Sometimes you really want to pursue that transforming relationship with God. You can even tell yourself in your heart, I want to know God more. I'm in hot pursuit of God, but those bad days come. Bad news comes. And all of a sudden, that pursuit gets derailed. Discouragement can overcome desire. And here's the deal too. I'd love to tell you today, I'm going to give you a pathway to avoid discouragement, all right? No more discouragement for Peak City folks. I've got the secret to it all, but that's actually not the case. There's no way to avoid the bad days. There's no way to avoid the bad news. There's no way to avoid discouragement. And later in this psalm, David writes this, Psalm 37:24, though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. My wife is training right now. In a couple weeks, she's got a race, 18-mile trail race up in Cheyenne Mountain area, over in the mountains. And she's been into trail running for a while. And we met with a friend early on who was an ultra marathon runner. And we just said, hey, give us some tips if she's going to run these trails. He said this, hey, first of all, I want you to know you're going to stumble. You're going to go down. He said, when you're running a half marathon or a marathon on asphalt, you most likely won't fall. But this is some rough terrain here. So if you're going to do trail race, you need to know you're going to come back some days with some bloody knees and some bloody elbows. Just the other day, my wife ran 14 miles, came back, legs covered in blood, and she came through the door going, don't be alarmed. I'm okay. I took a little stumble. Here's the deal with life, guys. You're going to stumble. You're going to stumble. You cannot avoid discouragement. That is not an option for you. It's not an option for me. You will face discouragement. So you know what? Just know, don't be discouraged because there is discouragement. Don't say, am I doing something wrong? Maybe, but maybe not. We're going to stumble. We are going to have to deal with this. So how do we deal with discouragement? And I think that's outlined pretty well as we read the next couple verses in this psalm. So discouragement can overcome your desire. You may desire God, discouragement may went out there. But desire can become commitment. That's the next thing I want you to write down. Desire can become commitment. If you open up that Psalm 37, delight yourself in the Lord, he'll give you the desires of your heart. He follows up with the very next couple verses that are very directly going, okay, but here's how you do that. Psalm 37, 5 and 6, it says, commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him and he will do this. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn. So David, the writer of the psalm, he says, desire God. That's the secret to life, man. I figured out life. Desire God, and he'll give you all the desires of your heart. He will delight you in ways you never knew. But if you want to desire him, hey, you got to follow that up with commitment. You've got to commit to him. I'll ask a rhetorical question. We won't answer or get graphic in here. But can you imagine a marriage that is full of desire but lacking in commitment? Think about that relationship. A marriage relationship has plenty of desire, but no commitment. That's a recipe for disaster. I mean, that can be a really, really bad thing. The commitment is just as important as wanting God. You've got to commit to him. Let me give you another example. Commitment can actually compensate when there is zero desire, because sometimes the desire wanes. Sometimes the desire like empties itself out and you have no more desire, but the commitment can carry you through. A few years ago, my wife and I did this dietary plan thing, a cleanse called Whole30. You guys ever heard of Whole30? We did Whole30, and let me tell you how it starts off. It's no dairy, no bread, no processed food, no sugar, no joy is another, that's a part of it too. You guys, I don't preach very often, but when I do, if you really pay attention, you notice like a third of my illustrations are food illustrations. So when I come into Whole30, I'm like, okay, here we go. And it actually starts out pretty good. You're like, man, I can do this. I mean, you start out going, look at all the things I can eat. Look at that. Asparagus is on there. Steak. I mean, this is going to be fine. So you start out feeling pretty good. And day 10, you're like, man, I've eaten like steak like 4 days in a row. This is good stuff. I'm feeling awesome. By day 20, you're looking at the steak and you're going, what happened to us, steak? Like, we used to have a thing, and now I don't want that anymore. Day 25, you're driving by like donut shops that aren't on your way home just to look in the window. Just like roll your window down and smell the pastries go into your nose. But here's the deal. Day 25, you ain't quitting. You're committed. I did Whole30. I didn't do Whole25. That commitment carried me on, all right? The desire was gone. I no longer want to do this stupid cleanse, all right? I'm so done with it. But the commitment to say, I'm going to finish this thing, that carried me through. Desire is a good thing. Desiring God is exactly what the psalmist says here. You got to desire God. He'll delight you in ways you'll never understand. But also, that ain't enough. You got to commit. You have to commit to him also. Are you committed to God? If I ask you that question today, I really want to let that pause hang out there for a second. How much have you really committed to God? You can desire him. You can come to church on Sunday morning, or you can casually have a relationship with him. But oftentimes our walk with God has desire, but it's haphazard, it's lackadaisical, and there's no real commitment that says, I am 100% in. So if you're dealing with discouragement and it's not going well, I challenge you, evaluate your commitment. Not just your desire, not how much you want God, but what you have committed to him. So let's review these again. Discouragement can overcome desire. Desire can become commitment. And next, commitment can capture reward. Commitment can capture reward. Psalm 37, 5 and 6, I'll read it again. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him and he will do this. All right, if you commit to him, this is what he's going to do. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn. He will make your reward shine, like he will make it really obvious. Paul says it like this in Galatians 6, chapter 6, verse 9. He says, let us not become weary in doing good. For the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. If you stay committed, if you give that commitment, your reward will shine like the dawn. If you stay committed, yeah, it's not fun. You don't necessarily enjoy it, but you will eventually reap the harvest. You will see the fruit from all of that work. If you set your heart on God, if you desire God, you'll get everything you want. That's what this verse promises. But that commitment is what makes the reward come into focus. I've been following Jesus for over 2 decades now. And there are times that I forget about my relationship with him. So if you're new to Jesus, if you're new to Peak City, if you don't really understand the reward, we're going to talk about that here in a minute. But for those of us that have been following Jesus for a while, there's times that I don't focus on it. I don't focus on how much he loves me. I don't focus on the reward of heaven. In fact, I set it in the corner. Maybe every once in a while, I throw some dirty laundry over that way. It gets covered in dust, and I don't think about all that God has in store for me. So in my times of discouragement, I don't realize how much God loves me, and I can become more and more and more discouraged. This psalm says this: if you commit to him, he will make that reward shine like the dawn. He will bring that back to your attention. He'll remind you, I know you're having a bad day, but listen, not forever. Not forever. So if commitment can really show us that reward, it can capture the reward, what kind of commitments can we make? What can we commit to? And I just have a few examples today. This isn't like a whole list of everything you need to do. This isn't a check mark. If you do all these things, then you're right with God. I'm just throwing out some commitments that I think you can make. One, I think you could commit to daily reading Scripture. I think you can commit to opening up your word. We preached about that from this stage just a few weeks ago. But if you download like an app on your phone that sends you a reminder when you get up in the morning, before you go to bed at night, just spend a few minutes in Scripture. I think God can remind you of the reward that he has in store for you. Your connection with him can be stronger. Another commitment you can make is joining a group. Join a group here at Peak City. We're going to start another semester in the fall, another group semester. Man, I'm in a group right now. I love it. I love these guys. A lot of people sign up for these things too, by the way. You sign up for a group, but you don't stick with it. There was a couple weeks ago, for the first time ever, our group's on Wednesday night. I didn't want to come. I was discouraged and I didn't want to come. Commitment to it, to say I'm going to repeatedly do it over and over again. That's what brings the life change. That's what brings that reward into focus. Maybe commit to being here every Sunday. I know that's a funny thing to say to people that are all sitting here on a Sunday, but what if you were here every Sunday? Average person that attends church, evangelical churches in the United States, comes to church 1.3 times a month. So if this is where we gather, this is where we encourage one another, this is where we learn, this is where we sharpen one another. If this is a place we do that, what if we committed to saying, I'm not going to miss? I'm going to be here every Sunday. It's more important than sleeping in. It's more important than being out in the woods on a hike. I'm going to adjust my schedule around this so that I can be reminded of that reward that God has for me. Commit to joining a team. Joseph talked about that earlier. Joining a team here, volunteering. If you commit to that, you will see life change, all right? When you serve, you get a front row seat to that life change. You're reminded of the reward, and it can carry you through some of that discouragement. Last thing I'll say, commit to praying. I'm a pretty introverted guy. I don't love, I was going to say social interactions, but that sounds bad, doesn't it? Sometimes I struggle in conversation. I do. So if you give me a script and I can spend a week writing this helps. But conversation with God, I can't even see him. How do I do conversation with God? Hey, if you commit to prayer, just saying, I'm going to do it 5 minutes a day, I think God will begin to reveal to you some of that reward he has in store for you. And when you see that reward, that life change starts to happen and you can deal with discouragement. And that's how I want to end this today. So discouragement can overcome desire. Desire can become commitment. Commitment can capture the reward. And reward can defeat discouragement. Reward can defeat discouragement. When you think about, when you know and understand what God has in store for you, it can press you through that discouragement. It can push you right through that valley, and you come out on the other side going, hey, that wasn't fun, but at least I know how much God loves me. At least I'm encouraged in what God has in store for me. And here's the cycle that we see in Psalm 37. It's a whole cycle. Discouragement can overcome your desire. I desire the Lord. I want to delight in everything God does in me, but discouragement can overcome that. But desire can become that commitment. That commitment to him can capture that reward, and that reward can defeat that encouragement. And this is a cycle of life. This is a reality of life. Discouragement is going to come. You cannot avoid it. But this psalm kind of outlines how we can deal with that. Desire God, stay committed to him, and he will make that reward shine like the dawn. And when you see that reward, you go, man, this is worth it. I'm okay. I'm going to make it. This week I had plenty of examples to preach on discouragement this week. Looked several people in the eyes that were dealing with tears flowing down their cheek as they're dealing with life stuff. Met with parents that are dealing with teenage kids making choices they don't want to make. Met with people in my own family, in my own house, that it's like, yeah, this is rough. This life can be very discouraging. And in those times, I have to remember what God has in store for me. That's how I overcome. That's how I defeat discouragement, is thinking about what God has for my future. Hebrews 12:11 says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful later on. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Listen, there are days that you'll have discouragement in your life that you're really just looking at a later on kind of scenario. No discipline seems pleasant at the time. You're just going, hey, later on though, things are going to be different. And that's ultimately, if you're new here, man, this is what this journey is all about, is later on. See, Jesus died on a cross for us. He took our sin, our burden. We sang a song about that. The things that we've done, and he put that on himself. So he suffered. He suffered ultimate discouragement so that he could raise from the grave and deliver us. And we get this later on kind of hope. Later on, something's coming to us, a reward that makes all of this life worth it. Revelation 21, 1-5 says this. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. This city came from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people. No longer later on, it is a now thing. God's dwelling place is among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. And this is what I want you all to hear when you're thinking about discouragement. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. He who is seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. When we have discouragement in our lives, we have to think later on, there's no crying, no pain, no mourning, no tears. This week as you go into your life and you might have a bad day, this week as you look someone in the eyes who you love and you see tears in their eyes, this week as tears may fall from your eyes, remind yourself there is a reward on the other side of this life in heaven. And when we think about that, man, that can defeat that discouragement, and we can delight ourselves in God, and he will give us the desires of our heart. We talk about commitment a lot today, so I want to end with this. We're going to close our eyes and bow our heads all right now. I want to give you an opportunity to make a commitment. No pressure, just if you want to. If you're sitting out there and you say, you know what, my desire for God has been one thing, but I know my commitment to him has been lacking, I want you to raise your hand if you say, I'm going to recommit right now. Everybody's eyes are closed, nobody can see. Raise your hand if you say, I want to recommit to God. I'm no longer following him casually. I'm gonna pursue him hard. Man, there's hands going up. I love it. Y'all put your hands down. If you're hearing this news for the first time, no pressure from me. But if you're saying, hey, I desire God and I maybe want to begin this journey of pursuing him. If you want to take a first step towards pursuing Jesus, raise your hand right now. It's a decision between you and God. If you want to raise your hand and say, God, I love you, and I want this kind of life to deal with discouragement, we encourage you in that. If you raise your hand today, I want you to know that we're here for you. You can go out to info bar and ask any questions you want. We want to answer any questions that we can. We also just want to know that we want you to know that we love you and we support you. I'm going to pray right now. God, thank you for today. I know firsthand from just people I've got to spend time with this week, there is some discouragement out there. But God, no matter how much the enemy attacks us, we know that he's already been defeated. He has already lost that battle. And we, God, belong to you. Help us to desire you more this week, but also, Holy Spirit, challenge us. If we're full of desire but not commitment, help us to up our commitment to you. And God, for any of us right now who need a picture of heaven, give that to us this week, just to remind us that this life is temporary. We may stumble, but we won't fall, because eventually we end up in that holy city. We end up in that place with you. We love you, God, and thank you for a church where we can worship you like this. Amen.